Good evening and welcome to Loma Country Township budget meeting for October 28th. Please join me for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Bruce, floor is yours.
All right, thank you. So I wanted to make sure we had a good session to review with the board. Any questions you may have from the other evening? Sure, go ahead.
Hey, just so I understand it,
Uh-huh.
our budget is for 14 million, correct?
That's correct.
And we have a shortfall of approximately 1 million.
Correct, about 884,000, 887,000.
So just so and that shortfall will come from is that the general fund budget or the reserve budget?
Yeah, so that amount comes from the township's fund balance. If you look in the first section of your book, there is a list of right after the tab, the 01 tab, there's a list of fund balance. And that does show the use of fund balance and the remaining and anticipated fund balance for 2024 and 2025.
Okay, without me looking, what is that fund balance?
That fund balance we project at the end of this year, we'll continue to look at is about 18,600,000. And if we use the entirety of the reserve funds, we anticipate we'll be at $17,714,723. And at the end of 2025, if we expend all of those monies and it's necessary that we transfer the reserves.
All right, so that's called the general reserve fund.
Yeah, so the township maintains what's called fund balance. Fund balance, we have a policy for the necessity to maintain certain fund balance for things like operating reserve, fiscal stability fund. And the fund balance, if you check the sheets for the various funds, they each have a fund balance potentially if we have remaining monies there. So for example, the capital projects fund maintains a fund balance. It's necessary, as we talk about that this evening, to spend down some of that fund balance if we choose to complete all projects. The sewer fund has a sewer fund balance, and it has funds in there, and they remain as basically like a savings account. So to utilize fund balance, that is where the line item for transfer from reserves shows from each of those budgets. Right. Basically, overall cash on hand, and what we figure out and calculate our interest calculations and expectations is coming out of that component. Fund balance is also important, as we've shared with the board. When you finance money, finance debt, as we did for the open space bond issuance, that cash on hand goes against or helps our bond rating. So, and one of the reasons we were able to be a AAA rated agency was our fund balance and the amount of fund balance that we have available.
Right. And just one more thing. So I'm correct saying that fund balance, the reserve fund, that's what we also dipped in before for unforeseen expenses like the Willow Lane sewer project, the Spring Creek Road when we had that water problem.
Yes. So I can't speak specifically to the Willow Lane sewer side, because that would be, a separate fund balance. However, so we anticipated that there was potential we may use fund balance for each of the last several years that we've prepared the budget. Unfortunately, we didn't have to use that fund balance. However, yes, if there was an opportunity where we had a substantial repair, things that weren't covered in our budget, we would ask the board to direct those fund balance dollars into the budget, in this case, the general fund or the sewer fund, and spend those dollars to cover those things. So yes, it is for contingency, but it's not, it's not budgeted. We consider that separate, like I said, almost like a savings account.
I'm figuring that's why it's important to balance the budget, so we have that emergency fund.
That
Need it.
That's correct. That's correct. One or two disasters, and you could deplete those dollars. And we've also tried to, the fund balance policy allows the manager to assign certain parameters of fund balance. The board, of course, per the policy, can always commit fund balance to certain things, like reserves, projects, all of those things with a board vote. But we have, at least on my end, I've recommended, and we're holding certain things assigned, like fiscal stability reserve, operating / fiscal stability reserve, things for, other post-employment benefits that we've identified that we have that money, it's available, and we look to assign that. So if you look at the balance sheet of the audit, the annual audit, you'll see fund balance, and then fund balance assigned, and then an overall unassigned fund balance number.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and just the pension fund monies, are those in fund balances?
No,
Or
so yeah,
that's
so
in-
pension fund is always kept separate because it is a pension fund. You'll notice that's our fiduciary fund that shows in the accounting. So those are always segregated and kept in a different.
Okay.
We have to report them, and we do report them, but they're not available. They're non-spendable, but they're not in that amount.
Okay.
Any other questions? You good, Brian?
All right, so yeah, it's great. If the board needs any more information, I thought tonight we could finish out kind of some of the categories that we have to kind of look at. Sewers, we'll look at capital projects, as well as community and economic development. Vince is here in case we have any questions on that. Stan's here for any of the sewer side, if we have to look at those. And then, if the board has additional questions or needs information, staff can assemble that, get that either at our next meeting if you so choose, or at a future board meeting. So my end, I still owe, and we're still looking at part of our 5-year capital plan for items that we'll finish up and get at least a chart of where that is and that anticipated spending over to everybody, just so you can see the picture and what we're thinking about. So I owe that component. I know I've already had one question about something else, so I'll make sure I assemble those answers and get them back to everybody. So that's what I'd like to do tonight, unless anybody wants to recap from anything we talked about last time. Good? All right. We'll try to keep it, I don't think it'll be quite as extensive this time, so we're going to start sewer fund side, and just as we always do, little review. That is the 08 fund, as we call it internally. This entails all of our sewer related operations, including, our sewer maintenance crew, which has a crew chief. There's 4 full-time sewer members in there. Our sewer enforcement officer in permits, he's actually covered by this budget. We have some administrative staff, assistant finance director, admin assistant, public works, and then our, outside firm for billing. We have accounted for in certain line items in there. We do have a slight change this year as we look to onboard for 25. Probably some of the dollars when we do onboard public works director, about 25% of their salary as they, that's 25% technically of their oversight and work is on the sewers. So that part we did kind of put in this budget then at this point. 125 miles of pipe in there, 4,000 plus manholes. And that's kind of what we're dealing with in the system if people aren't familiar. Um, what have we done for the year? What is it that we do during these operations? Looked at almost 2,000 PA1 calls that we mark and verify. We placed our new sewer jet truck in service that came at the end of last year. We looked at 279 sewer lateral inspection reports. Those are when homes transfer. That's part of the process where we ask them to get a video report. Our staff reviews that, provides feedback. Now, I would note that all these numbers are just January to present time, so these will increase. We flushed 266 sewer runs, and then our crews have videoed about 48,000 feet of sewer line. So most of our projects, we look on a 10-year time frame to complete that videoing and then start all over again so that we're always maintaining. We repaired 17 manholes, repaired 10 curbside cleanouts, looked at 191 manhole inspections, which we now do digitally in partnership with the county. Assisted on that update of the 537 plan that the board will see here probably in the spring. We updated our sewer allocation fees. Renee, my clicker's dead. Did we freeze up the computer? All right, we froze up the computer because it's sewers. There we go. Worked on some of the bigger projects that we had in the capital side. Coordinated with Upper Macungie on that repair near the middle school up on Mill Creek and
Is
Lower
that done
Macungie
yet?
Road. That is done and complete. We paid our appropriate 160,000 share. Grouted 46 laterals, and we're in the process of finishing that lateral grouting job this year. We lined almost 19,000 feet of pipe with the cured in place plastic SIP. We repaired manhole behind H and Oaks, and then one in the Hills of Lockridge where we had to go in and kind of build some access to them and have some risers on them. What we want to look at for 25, as we talked about with the board at one of the workshops, planning for that possible extension on East Texas Road. We have still to work through some outreach. By the time we get the outreach done and then permit completion, I think we'll probably be ready for 26. I don't have it budgeted for 25, just to give us enough time on where that is. Continue to repair manholes, and that's frames and risers. A lot of this right now, that inflow work is part of these components through those manholes. Work on that 10-year flushing and TV plan. And then capital projects, as we're going to talk about a little bit later. So where does our money come from? How do we pay for things that happen in the sewer operation? So we broke them down for you. As we talked about with fund balance, you'll see we anticipate with our fund balance number an interest earnings of potentially 270,000, sewer connection permits 5,000, sewer charges a little over 5 million. We are not proposing a rate increase for 25. Extra strength charges 80,000. We will need to make an adjustment on that rate. That is the usually business flows that are in excess of regular. That's why it's called extra strength. And those are factored in by like total suspended solids, things of those nature. Those are set by the authority. We basically pay the authority after they test their amount. So that's why we have to adjust the rate. Penalties for non-payment, 25 wastewater allocation fees. That is the allocation when people have new construction or need to connect in. Sewer certs. So when those properties transfer, part of this process is to make sure their bills are paid. They get a sewer cert and on-lot permits. So that is kind of the breakdown on how we collect those revenues. You'll see the biggest one, of course, is user rate charges. That is definitely the main driver of the account here. What do we see on expenditures? Basically, we're pretty flatlined from, our current year, except for, always that treatment and transport. We like to make sure, and we continue to hear that the county rate for treatment and transport will increase. So, that's an area. However, most of the other line items, we held flat to their 2024 allotment. Capital projects, we're looking at a little over, almost 1.3 million, but 1,270,000. Doing the SIP lining on the rest of the clay pipe that we have identified so far. So another 23,000 feet of pipelining. While we're reestablishing those laterals, doing grouting on 252 lateral connections, and then doing a clean out replacement in either lining or dig on 31 laterals. That is from the main line to the right of way, end of the right of way. That project's out to bid currently. We should have those numbers back fairly soon. I'll have to look at the closing date. Renee, do you remember the closing date for sewer projects? Okay, so we'll have those to kind of firm up where we are. But just a reminder on, the way we look at sewer projects and things on this type of budget. I know there's always a lot of questions about it. Our sewer capital projects and they address items that we know over the course of their lifespan, especially clay pipe, lateral connections, things of that nature, where we're looking to make those improvements to the system. It just so happens that as part of a source reduction plan that we have with DEP, and this source reduction plan is included in our 537 plan, which will be before the board, identifies a course of action to reduce inflow and infiltration into the system. So we lay out in part of that 537 plan specifically how we're going to reduce those flows. So they're kind of all linked as we propose things in that plan. Then we have to perform. We have a time period while the 537's in effect, as we talked about with the board. At next plan's due, and then we're looking from that period to like 2035. So knowing that we have potentially, I've been informed, up to maybe 4,000 taps and taps from that main line to the right of way. Of course, we've had priorities. We've been taking 50 to 100 a year. If you think about 4,000 taps at $7,000 a piece, we have substantial commitment for repairs to our system that, of course, can be outside of the source reduction program, but something to be mindful of. This sewer operation always continues to have improvements at some form. So I always think it's important to talk projects, why we're in the situation that we are. Even if the source reduction program went away, I think it's good business on our end that we're always improving that now 60-year-old, 70-year-old infrastructure that's in the ground. So what are the expenditures for the sewer fund? And you see that big one that I identified, sewer treatment and transport, almost $2.5 million. That is the component for flow that we send to the Kleins Island sewer system at the processing plant. It's based on various contracts, what we pay for service. We are in the Western Lehigh district that has its own contract, as well as we're a direct city signatory as well. So we have two separate agreements, and we have an allocation and a flow allocation through both of those. So as residents use more or less, we get billed for what they send to the plant. We use it based on your water bills, for those that aren't familiar. But that is our biggest area. Our next side, those capital projects, and then staffing, and then benefits, insurance for the staffing. some of the highlights here in future planning that we need to be mindful of, and I kind of hit on some of them. The authority continues to raise its rates, on occasion. I have in red and very bold. It's anticipated that they are going to raise their rates to the township about 5.1% for 2025. So that largest item, as we saw, $2.5 million for treatment and transport, those costs have to be absorbed and taken somewhere. So we have a little bit of reduction in capital spending, and you see it's necessary that that creeps up a little bit for them. The township doesn't have control over those issues. They are split by agreement. So, where are these rates going to go? The large scale LCA projects that could be several $100 million. We've seen some of their press release and PR type items where they were ballooning $200, $300, $400 million. I can say directly at this point, between Upper Macungie, Lower Macungie, and our peers in the Western Lehigh, Albertus, Macungie, Upper Milford, Low Hill, Weisenberg. I anticipate about $130 million worth of projects just for that Western Lehigh contingent. Upper and Lower Macungie will be responsible for about 40% of that 130 million. Upper Macungie will be responsible for about 60 million of those improvements. Do I think they will happen in 5 years? They do not, as the emphasis is on source reduction now. But I believe by 2035, there will be shovels in the ground fixing those capacity infrastructure. So I always want to be on the long-term rate. I would recommend we had a rate study done by PFM. They had done that several years ago to look at where we are for future rates. I would ask and say that we should be having them do another rate evaluation in 25 once kind of the authority and the projects required sets a little more firmly. I believe, and this is just my personal belief from what I'm seeing, I think in the next 10 years, there will be between 100 and 140% necessary rate increases. So for us to talk about these things now, address capital projects, get them out of the way when we are carrying that debt load potentially, or increase reserves significantly to allow for a bigger down payment on that debt and that debt servicing. I would not be doing my due diligence to report to the board that that's what we should be looking to do as that's going to come upon us. So with the source reduction plan, in the DEP's opinion, getting that inflow and infiltration out is the purpose of this next component of the plan. It's not to build those long-term, larger scale projects. That will be in the next phase here. So, but in my time here, I think we'll see significant impacts on future sewer issues. So, any questions about sewers? The budget for that side of it, projects.
Couple questions.
Mhm.
5.1% anticipated increase, but what is that in dollars? Approximately.
So I got to pull where we are. We're around, 2 million, 10% of that's 200, 5% is 100. So we think we're going to spend around, a little over 2. And remember, this is all flow based. So if we use more, then that number becomes higher. So we worked back a little bit on that way. We had budgeted, this year 2.3. We figured, what is that 100,000 there? That gets you to the 2.45. So,
Approximately 200.
Yeah, I think we'll be a little lower that just because of flows, but we try to say it could be a little more worst case scenario. And what we have, and if you look back into the history of that line item, for the last several years, we have been anticipating an increase in those those uh, those charges by the authority, not just the 5%, but projects that they have identified that they were going to both finance and complete. I'll give you an example. One of them, they're still in process with, that is the Trexlertown bypass line. About a $14 million project, actually comes through Grange Park, down behind Walmart, and then into that dogleg section that we worked with Upper Macungie to straighten this year. So for years after I got here, they had talked about that project and the debt service with that. It just never moved forward. Well, it moved forward, and now we're in that component where we're going to be charged the debt service for it. Same as they've had another generator project that's several $1 million in the system that we share a cost of. Now we're starting to see those numbers become a little more true than what we had them for. So as they roll that additional debt on, that number is going to increase as well. That makes sense.
It does. So with that 200,000 approximate, and this, from the get-go, we're 57,000 behind.
Correct.
So we're about $250,000. And that $250,000, does that come from the fund I first talked about?
Yeah. So sewers has its own fund balance. So sewer fund balance would look at that 55,700. And like you said, if that number would come back significantly higher, so we flow, $2.8 million worth of flow, we would have to come back to the board and say, hey, we're going to need to use fund balance to cover those costs that we see. Now we have an estimate, so we feel like we're pretty well covered. But once again, I would note, if we didn't have this fund balance number that we have in sewers, so we anticipate we're going to be around 9.3 million. Without that, we wouldn't generate that 270,000 in interest, and then we would be behind. So those interest dollars are helping us fund this kind of process right now without raising rates. And frankly, on the 55,700, I think with the way we've been managing our budget, we'll be in line. However, we can make that up in our emergency repair line item, things of that nature. And I feel comfortable. I feel comfortable that we'll be pretty much break even probably. But that 55,700 would come, we would call that transfer from reserve. And that reserve is from the sewer fund balance.
So with that approximate 200,000 and 57, $250,000, if we reduce our capital projects down to 1 million, that would balance this budget addressing 2025.
So the budget is balanced with the exception of the 55,000. We actually anticipated that 200,000 in sewer costs from the authority. So we actually already decreased our capital projects from about 1.5 million down to that 1,270,000. That money had to come from somewhere. So we reduced the capital expenditure, and now you're about $55,700 in the negative. So we reduced capital projects to account for that expense.
That's covered then. I anticipated it.
That's correct. But I think it's important to note to the board and the public that as much as the township may try to actively manage our budget, we have outside forces that continue to set the rates in their business operation and impact us significantly, where the board and staff are trying to contain resident rates. And a 5% increase every year from the authority, or a 4% increase, as you see, is substantial at $200,000 where that is. So I think it was important to note that, but we did. So that is keeping us from doing even more capital projects to get that budget close to balance.
But it's important they should also know we do not cheap out in our investment in the sewer system.
That's correct.
That 1,270,000 grew every year, and all of us have been around. We used to think 800 was like through the roof and reduce it to,
Yeah.
To $500,000. So the point I'm trying to get at is, even if we drop this to 1.2, which is heck of an investment in the system, compared to our neighbors, we would have a flat budget.
Well, I would say, compared to our neighbors have floated long-term debt, in the millions of dollars, like Macungie and Albertus Borough, who, you know, significantly raised rates and completed all of their projects, in those two boroughs, as well as Upper Macungie, who spent over, $12 million in the last, 5 to 7 years. So I would say we're on par with our neighbors. However, our system, also is older than Upper Macungie. We have significant inflow and infiltration in locations. And so, to be compared to others, now there are other municipalities in the valley that have not put any dollars in, and we are spending significantly over. However, I would note our peers in the Western Lehigh, we are behind our peers. The peers in the valley, we are ahead of substantially by some.
Well, my driver is budget meeting.
Yeah.
To balance the budget. Again, the 1.2 would be a heck of an investment. We wouldn't have a negative, whatever it is, 57, approximately 57,000.
And
normally I would argue to spend a lot less than.
yeah, I will tell you that, even at the 55,700, I believe that, at the end of managing the year next year, we'll make sure that we're break even. However, we can adjust numbers to make a $55,700 budget neutral.
It just helps our $900,000.
Well, it doesn't help it at all because
because
it's a separate fund, correct? So, yeah, you're kind of in line there, and I think we're all right on that side of it. But yeah, and I would note that, and you are right, Commissioner, we are spending a lot of dollars on there. The daunting part on my end is if you look at 28 million more dollars worth of, tap replacements and linings, that's significant. Even if you take that over 28 more years, that's $1 million just in real dollars to address that issue. So, it's okay. It's in the ground, and we'll make it last. But that burden of where we should be, to try to finish up. So it's significant, these dollars, and they're only as we look at both authority projects and here, the staggering rate that they are, increasing for less, that you're getting done. You're talking 10 to 30% increases for the same level of work in dollar value. It's substantial, and it's something to be mindful as the board is, so.
Whole other.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You good? All right. Excellent. So let's talk capital projects fund. That is that's the 30 fund. So I think it's important to note, where does money come from for the capital projects fund? The big one, of course, the property tax. People may or may not be confused that their property taxes go to that general fund. The board, when they enacted that tax years ago, and rightfully so, they direct that towards capital projects. What is a capital project, right? Any kind of long-term item or large-scale item, fixing buildings, putting in playgrounds, bridges, all of those things. This does not contain sewer type capital projects. This is only things outside of that budget. So where do we get the revenue? Directly from the property tax, about 1,325,000 interest. And then the only other way to fund that is to transfer money in. So where can we transfer money from? General fund, developer impact fund, things of that nature. We're recommending that 900,000 from the general fund to try to make sure we can continue with projects. So it will be necessary as well to use about 1.244 million worth of fund balance, or as we say, transfer from reserves on the budget sheet, for a total of $3,819,700. So what do we spend these dollars on? We'll see a further breakdown, but $22,300 tax collection. So to get the bills out, fund that office, we're a little over 20,000. Transfer to the debt service fund. So if you remember the other night, we looked at the 2021 note issuance. That does cover community center expansion plus some of the open space transaction for Wiener property and Licton Walner. So 329,000 of that 700 and whatever it is, 27,000 plus dollars in debt, we transfer right from the capital fund over to the debt service fund. Capital projects, we'll see them. We're going to anticipating to spend 3.468 million. So what are those items? And how are they relevant? One of them, playground equipment. We anticipate, and as we've talked about at workshop, about 635,000 on the Quarry Lane Park replacement. Quarry Lane Park was unsafe. It's been removed, that structure. So this is the replacement for that. We have now replaced 2 playgrounds. As the question was the other night, are we on track to get to our 10 or 12 identified playgrounds as we work through the list? This is one of the playground areas that is on that list for a long-term part of our park plan. Mowers and blowers, we had a request for about 60,000. It's actually 67,000 to replace a park mower that we use for sidewalks, snow clearing, those type of things. I didn't include that in these numbers at 3,480,000. Community center improvement, 277,000. The existing roof on the old portion of the community center. So above the check-in desk, running down that hallway between the gym and the library where we fixed the skylight not too long ago. This is the rubber roof. That building is now in excess of 20 years old. We are pushing with our overall roof evaluation that this is a priority roof for us. That is why it's on the part at this point. We don't want to wait and push that off any further. So that is a main component priority for us, as well as a compressor pump for the HVAC. There is a bank of pumps in that compressor. However, we are down and operating one short at the moment. So we need to get that replaced. Park improvements. This is a carryover project from last year. Well, this year currently, we had budgeted for lighting Quarry Park fields, 250,000. After our estimates, we found out that we're in the neighborhood of about 200 or 690 to finish that project. So we included that in this budget. If the board would like to push forward with that. Our next tennis court in the recon program is Wescosville. We finished Wild Cherry this year. That was about a $200,000 project. Wescosville is some crack assessments and adjustments, as well as overlay and fencing component. That's only about 100,000, a little less significant than Wild Cherry. To that playground and one of the parts to the pavilion at Quarry out of the parking lot, ADA pathway for accessibility. Church Lane Park, there's 2 facilities there. One is a storage building, the other's a pavilion. They've been identified as well on our long-term roof improvement plan as high priority areas. So that's 39,500 on that component. Municipal building upgrades, we're hopeful to have a better number here. 185,000 for the elevator that we've had budgeted for the last 2 years, but I think we're going to finally get it done after potential 25-week wait for parts after we do an order. So maybe that number will change. PW equipment, we have a forklift that's unsafe. It's been kind of pointed out to us, 40,000 for a new forklift. Bridge upgrades, gun club, as we talked about, this year, came back over budget. We're looking at still about, that we have that bid in hand. That's about 548,000 for the bid. The rest is project management. Still have the culvert on Chestnut. We had to get some easements for potential, construction during that process. That's why that hasn't moved forward from this year. And then we're looking at Smith Lane Bridge this year. We're looking at Ash next year. So we have in our long-term plan, Gun Club, Smith, then Ash. So those are the three bridges we have to complete. Our next bridge, which we see is a little longer term, is the bottom of Sauerkraut. So I think once we get through Gun Club, Smith, Ash, we can take a little break until our next round. I would note that our priorities now at this point on Gun Club, our highest priority, Smith is our next highest, Ash. We think we can get those next couple of years out of, but they've been identified as in need of replacement now. Not critical, but in need that it's time. So we don't have many years on those structures.
Which was Smith, the one that's marked Chestnuts?
No. So we actually are in design for Smith for 2026. That one's almost done, but yes, that is not included on here, but Chestnut Street, if you're coming out of the borough, when you come around the one bend, you'll notice there's a concrete end wall there. The trucks have hit that end wall on numerous occasions. The end wall's fallen over. Then we have an older pipe there. So that is the Chestnut side of it. So yeah, Smith is the 2026, 2027, we anticipate Ash at that point. So what we're doing is like everything else, we're designing a bridge in 1 year. So it can be designed, bid, we have the number, then build the following year. So we know that, as I said, that's a real number for Gun Club. Not sure on the Chestnut Street. That's getting ready to go out for bidding as well. Stormwater, one of the big ones, and the board saw a presentation from CKS as we've been working through videoing our pipeline that is for stormwater in various neighborhoods. We've identified certain portions that cannot be lined. We think they have to be dug and replaced. When we dig and replace, that requires, of course, curbing and yard restoration and sidewalk restoration and anything else. We have that number back because we did bid that job, and the board's going to need to consider if they want to not award that job. That was 676,000. The other rest of that is construction management, as we said. We'll have to probably have an inspector standing there for certain factions. So it's more labor intensive than lining on the inspection side. We have talked internally. Do we maybe, request the board, deny that bid and go back out, knowing that we'll have future projects, kind of reduce it in scale. We've talked also about, do we do the whole project knowing that we need to get all of that work done anyway before it causes us problems in the street? Or do we potentially award and then, the law allows us to do work up to a reduction of 20%. So that would be about 520,000 instead of 676, knowing that we're going to still have to do the work in the future, present dollars, or what do we do? I think that's hard for me to recommend to the board since, we were over budget on Gun Club, and I take the full responsibility that those bids came back and they were actually somewhat higher than what we had seen already if we would have just ran over budget. So is it better to do things in real time? We went from like 536,000 to 548. So that delay and my recommendation to not award that costs us money, unfortunately. So, on this stormwater that we know we need done, we need to push forward potentially. Periwinkle, 50,000 to replace the basin fence there. And Sunflower, 48,000. As we see that these fences around various stormwater basins have now reached their lifespan, and it's necessary we replace. We are doing the basin by off Lower McCungy Road behind that you can see right by Wild Cherry if you're looking at that basin when you come down the street. So Hidden Valley to the rear of that side of it. So
These base fences, we bid them out or do them in-house?
yeah, so we actually bid them. We don't bid them. We can get various contractors now to give us quotes as we have some CoStarz vendors that do that. So they're chain link now. We're trying to go to a chain link fence situation. So before those contractors, we would have the bid over that 22,000 number. Now that we've identified, I think there's 2 CoStarz vendors now. We work to get the best bid and put them in that way. Split rails we replace in-house as we can and replace post and rail. But these ones, when they're out, most of the split rails are going out. If we can remove them, we might get a 20, 25-year lifespan then on actual chain link. So traffic preemption device, we still have significant numbers of intersections to complete for there.
We've been putting the numbers in every year and not spending.
We've been spending. We have all the preemption stuff for Cedar Crest Boulevard. We're waiting for the permits to get approved from PennDOT. So everything's approved now, so they're going in. They're be the next couple of weeks already have to go ahead and they have the materials and all the permitting. So they're going in this next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and
We've been spending it.
well, we have been doing, that was one of the ones we were on a hold on. We have been working through those intersections in previous years
Well,
to try to get them
that's
done.
out of this year's budget.
Correct. That's this year's. Yeah, then we have another one lined up already for next year. So there's what, 7 signals that we still have remaining? 10.
Either 10 or 11.
Yeah, we still have 10 more that have to get equipped with the preemption. Items that were requested by staff that I don't have in this draft budget. As we said before, to hit the paving plan, we should be supplementing the liquid fuels fund about 400,000 to get to our full scope paving. Facility construction, and I have to put this one in just because we have to get the utilities up in the compost center building. For UGI, we have to start using gas by April, or there's a $40,000 line fee for their line construction. But I have to put that in and get heat moving out there. 60,000. In West Coastville, we had talked about abandoning the recreation center up there. We had some initial numbers where we thought we'd be around 400,000 on a prefab. Just can't do it this year, and I wouldn't recommend that we move forward with that. I think we need to get some better options with staff and try to figure out what we can do there. So, as I said, Parks Unit 67 is a mower. The plan that I've received from PW, which is actually I think very thorough now for the next couple of years. Replace that mower with the Ventrac 67,000. I think if I would recommend that we do that at some point if we can, to give us more flexibility. There's a request for a wheel loader, 250,000. We know our wheel loader fleet, there's 4. They've been aging. We replaced one a couple years ago. That's in there. In that facilities parks plan. Pickup unit 21 is actually due in 25. That's a 90,000 expenditure, and then a small trailer for 4,500 to complete. Traffic signal still. I know Commissioner Robert, this is on your list. The Brookside Princeton crosswalk. I just need to get numbers from engineering, and I haven't. So I need to follow up and make sure I have that. So about 1,271,000 in projects that I didn't put in the budget, but I wanted the board to be aware of where we are in case, you'd like to do those projects or expend additional dollars. So I don't want staff to feel like we haven't brought forward their requests on that side. So
So this is not in the budget then?
correct. Those are not in the budget, all those items.
Okay, the 60,000 for the compost building. What, what is that building? Is that restrooms or?
Yeah, so that gets us, we need to finish the utility part in there. So electric in that building, electric panel service, and then some form of heater to start using using that using that gas service. So that doesn't include at this point any build out for bathroom, but we know we'll need to do that in the future.
Okay, so, but this 60,000 would prevent us moving the compost collection point from Indian Creek
Uh,
to,
It will not. What's gonna prevent that? We still need site layout out there as well as fencing to secure that thing so no one comes up to the top of there and just starts dumping yard waste everywhere at the top of the cul-de-sac. The 60,000 allows us to basically have UGI. They ran the gas service all the way back from Sauerkraut Extension in the beginning of that lane all the way to the facility. Now, as part of that, we have to start using gas. So to use gas, we have to put a facility in there that actually uses that. That building, if you aren't aware, there are no utilities. So there's no internet, there's no power, there's no heat, and there's no cameras to watch our facility. So establishing that panel, overhead lighting in there, and heat is our first step of bringing that online. Basically a cold storage building now to protect things from the elements. And we have equipment sitting out there under roof. Our concept would be get those things out, get a bathroom in that side of it, get security cameras now watching that yard and that facility, and then having a place for, eventually attendants that will be out, that they have a restroom that they can use and everything else. So that 60,000 does not include guardhouse, gates, security, that component. That's another phase.
And the penalty if we don't use gas, how much?
It's about 42,000. Yeah. For utility, we're gonna use anyway.
No, we
Yeah,
almost lost with the gas.
right. Right.
I mean, it makes dollars and cents, makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the trade for, putting that facility out, knowing we were gonna need to have all services there. Now, there is no electric at this point. We're still waiting on the power company to finish their runs. That's in to run poles overhead back there, to get that component running. So,
Hey,
oh,
Ron,
yeah.
Is there a meter there? The gas meter is at the building.
There's a curb box, so we got to bring it from the curb box into the building. Same with the water. So we ran the authority actually ran a public water line extension to the back of that property, to a tap box, so tap vault. So we gotta pull that, and then the power is coming overhead. And then we gotta do a above ground service to get it in there.
I think UGI, once you have a heater in place, they'll run that to the meter and into the building.
Okay, good to know.
Well, to the meter anyway, run it to the meter
All right, good to know.
from the curb box.
Well, so yeah, there's nothing at that point of it, but
Yeah, they get you that, but they don't get you, but they want
yeah.
to get dividends on their investment.
Yeah, and it was that or, come up with a 40,000 when we were doing the road project, or don't do anything and then go dig the road back up again, our brand new road, dig that back up and run a gas service all the way back there. So we chose take the service now.
or what do we think about the 60,000?
Well, reason I look at it with the $40,000 penalty, really only 27.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, foolish not.
Okay with that time?
What do you think?
All right.
Makes sense.
Okay.
If I could add anything, it's not just the heat, throwing a heater in there, but, we have to meet the minimum requirements of Energy Conservation Code, through the building. So that ups, the cost. So,
And I just want to, I know too that our fund balance, our projected fund balance at the end of this year is about 2,093,000. If we would expend all the items that we have in there, we'll have around 848,000 remaining. I would note that we are waiting on several grants to be reimbursed once we finish projects. So Hillside School for 137,000, the stormwater project, MS4 out on Spring Creek is another 167,000. And then there's one other component in there that will get us additional dollars. So that like 300, I think it's 60,000 is going to get us to that 848,000. So the quicker we can close those projects out, make our requests to the state, that gets us there. So if projects go over budget or we don't have those revenues coming in, we need to throttle back to make sure that we don't overspend the 200 or 300,000 we have liquid until we get those grant reimbursements. That makes sense. We show it on the books that it's a receivable, right? So we anticipate we're going to get it. However, I don't want the board to think, oh, we have another $848,000 in there. We're good to go. If this goes over or this goes over, we're going to have to be tight where we need to be. So, all right.
And then that's assuming we don't reduce that.
Correct.
deficit.
Correct.
Right now, what we're.
Well, remember, you would be reduced of that deficit 900,000 that you're transferring to the capital budget. So because you're funding those 900,000 worth of projects, that is why you're about 887,000 over. So even if you reduce that down to 200,000, you're still going to be requiring 900,000 in fund balance or transfer of monies from the capital or from the general fund to the capital budget. So you're going to end the year either way, unless you cut projects at 848,000. So yeah, look, if you could or want to reduce other sides of it and say we're still going to run 500 to 800,000 negative, and there's things in there you decide or want to cut and say, all right, well, we're only going to do 600,000 instead of 887. You could then, in essence, keep the 887,000 and transfer another 200 in there, and you're sitting on $1 million instead of 848. If that makes sense. I think, and on my end, I don't want the number to seem as staggering as what it is. I don't like to bring budgets with that high of a fund balance required number to the board. I'm very cautious though, when we do these figures and try to be very conservative on what may or may not happen in the economy. So worst case scenario, this is the number. Best case scenario, I mean, we're fortunate where we said would need several $100,000 in fund balance for this year. And I think we're on par to be about 2.4 million in the positive. So when we proactively manage our budget and department heads manage the budgets with them and don't just recklessly spend, which we're fortunate we don't have that here, I feel better about that picture. And I would add, we are looking, as I said before, at kind of some succession planning for some staff. And as we potentially onboard some staff, that's accounted for in those dollars where we are in a one-time position where we, funded 2 staff members for a position as we work through the plan. We may have retirements that go out where that's involved in that side, where it's not like we're building and then building again. We may see some onboarding, we may see some retirements and offboarding, and those numbers might net out, or it's a one-time deal where we have to get people trained for an entire year, and we have 2 people serving in positions, if that makes sense. So,
It does, but you said one key word, the economy, economic conditions dictate a lot.
100%.
Everything.
Yeah, and I think we'll see that. And when we talk about land, our projects in the next part of the budget here that I want to final out, but we're trying to be very, very, very conservative on new construction, transfers of homes, all of those items that seem to have slowed somewhat. And those are drivers for us, unfortunately. So.
Sure, Jeff knows that. Economic conditions of the steel. Either make or break.
Can you go over the Musco lighting at Quarry Park?
Yeah, so there was, as we had talked about, looking at lighting various parks. So last year around budget time, we identified both, three places. Hills of Lockridge for tennis, as we took the tennis courts out of service here. It was, let's make sure we have a lit tennis facility, which was Hills of Lockridge. We then said, as part of that plan, do we want to light pickleball, which that was included in our process. They're basically ready to set the bases there. So, I had anticipated and estimated about 200,000 each one of those locations. We're sitting around, I think it's 207,000 at Hills of Lockridge. We're at 93,000 back here for both of those. When I just kind of threw a number at it, Quarry Park was also an area that was discussed on several occasions when we said, all right, let's make a capital project, lighting Quarry flat fields. There are some flat space from the ball field towards field one. How could we light that? I anticipated about 250,000. Put that in the budget for 2024. We engaged Musco when we brought them in, and they're like, yeah, it's about 690,000. So we had talked maybe at one of the workshops, and we said, look, I can't overspend at this point that much money from what we had budgeted. So we didn't execute that project this year. I left the project in for next year, being that we didn't finish it for 2024 because of the pricing. So that's why it's in there on that side of it. Like I said, it seemed like it was a priority project in 2024. I don't know if the board feels that way for 2025. So yeah.
So what are the real requirements for lighting those fields?
As far as candle power, all of those things.
No, I mean, okay, so it's soccer fields?
It is. It's two flat fields there, 500 by 300 is the total area. And when they ran out the lighting plan, I think it's 6 poles there, Stan.
There's,
8.
I think there's 6 poles and they're at the perimeter. So basically, yeah, they're at the very maximum perimeter of the area, which allows for multiple small fields, 2 large soccer fields to rotate the large soccer fields. The problem is with it being a lit field and being just natural grass, you have to have the ability to rotate fields, move fields around. If not, if you have the same 2 fields in the same areas, then, they'll just wear out main play sections. But the lights right now, they're situated at the basically around the perimeter that way of the both combined fields. That way it allows you any orientation of those fields to, whatever activities you're doing on them.
Yeah. And we also have, or there's concerns from the contractor that we have to have some upgrades from PPL out there as far as transformers and things of that nature. So once again, we're probably in a long-term wait, much like the elevator, of 20 to 30 weeks to get what they need to do, pad mount transformer or that component. So we took the estimate and put like another 60 to 70,000 for that electric work out there of that number, of that 690,000 number. So that's kind of how it breaks down and what they had given us on the Musco side to meet. You're right, Commissioner Robert, the minimum required no dark spots on the field layout is what they did. So like back here, the US Pickleball Association has like a minimum candle foot light, yeah, minimum candle lighting of what should be on a pickleball court. So our facility meets that side of it. So Moscow takes the same thing and says, all right, if you're going to run sports on a flat field, here's the minimum lighting requirements to be in a standard light plan. So
I would be okay with putting off the lights for a year.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, what's the desires? What's the, who
Mandate.
wants to play there? Like, who's looking to play there at night to begin with? Like, what do we have there? I know LMYA uses it, right?
yeah, LMYA uses fields. Mustangs currently our 8,000. We fund them. Buys portable lights on up at the middle school, as well as I believe LMYA soccer and some things at Creamery. They're using rental lights in that facility. I don't know what two fields, how much that's going to give us for those components, but there is, or is what's been conveyed to me, a need for lighting a facility permanently
What's
for
the,
use.
you know, what the temporary cost is for those temporary lights? Like, what do they charge?
I've heard that our contribution, our $8,000 contribution that goes to the Mustangs goes right to the light program. So 8,000 for them to rent that part. I haven't confirmed with the Mustangs, but I've also heard, at some point that donation can go away as lights are lit then, and they don't need our $8,000 donation. So-
8,000 and 700,000 are quite different.
Right, right. So,
You get a few years with that 8,000.
yeah, we got to run that out for 100 years
Yeah.
to get that back. So, we can look, I can see what the, rec programming need is, but, it's been conveyed on my end where that's going to be kind of a heavy use thing, almost the point of how do you get it? So you got to take one out of service and put, one in service to keep from tearing them up. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I guess that's the question. Is the demand so great that something need to do, for lack of a better term?
Or can we use $16,000 to light the two fields?
Yeah.
And I would note, I guess I didn't on the revenue part. I did anticipate transferring 300,000 from the recreation impact fee to cover the component of those lights, as that's regional recreation. There's about $1 million in that fund. That fund is per dwelling unit when construction happens, but I would caution the board, we don't know when more construction is going to happen. So as you deplete that fund, you're going to not be able to replenish it. So is this a project that you would want to look at part of those dollars from? So yeah, I would note you're about 300 on that side, but
Okay, so you okay with putting it off for a year?
Yeah, at this time, I think it's maybe a little excessive.
Okay.
I do, because I was just thinking, the parking area lit up. It's gonna be used at night, and then the paths to the field, are they lit
Right.
up?
would have to
It- it-
backlight all those,
It's not only the field.
yeah.
Can't have a lit field if you couldn't get. So, yes.
All right, we'll make an adjustment on that side of it. That's you'll be positive about 300. I would say we've heard some feedback on the 60,000 for the compost building. So you'd be around $1,080,000 left in your fund balance for that side of it. And if you save that 240,000, that gets you basically compost building, gets you vent track, at least two piece of equipment in the compost building, and you'd still be about 120,000 positive. You could either then, I could throw out several recommendations. One could be, you could reduce your contribution from the general fund by $120,000, which then reduces that number from 887,000 down to 760,000. Or you could continue to transfer that money to the capital budget, and increase the fund balance there to, about $960,000. So either way, you would be, not utilizing fund balance either out of the capital budget or the general fund.
I don't understand why you said 300,000 rather than 690,000.
Well, because I'm transferring $300,000 from the recreation impact fee.
Okay, so you're gonna leave, you would leave the 300,000 in the recreation.
Correct. Correct. The only thing that you would have eligible then to transfer those dollars would be the improvement of the tennis court, which I probably wouldn't recommend drawing down on those monies. And the playground, you could fund part of the playground structure at Quarry if you would want to do that component, because that's regional recreation as well. But other than that, I would say you would leave that in the impact fee fund, and then you'd be, positive, 300,000. I'm sorry, 390,000.
Okay, but, yeah, with 635,000 going into playground it started off being 250,000, then the average 450,000. So it seems like spending that at Quarry and not spending on the lights at Quarry makes sense.
All right, we'll adjust the budget to show that plus the compost center. Is there any interest in replacing that mower with a 1-for-1 for the vent track for 67,000?
If it's a necessity.
The urgency, is there urgency in it?
The vent track it's a low ground pressure field mower, which basically it's, for a lot of the naturalized areas need low ground pressure. It's got double tires, low ground pressure. Also for snow operations, we only have one tractor that has a snow blower on it. That's the width to go down our sidewalks that we have, the 5-foot sidewalks. With the tier 4 diesel engines in a lot of the tractors now, the tractors are becoming much larger with the same horsepower motor. So now a 40 horsepower tractor that would fit down our sidewalks before is now either too large to fit down at 40 horse, or we have to go down to like a 30 horsepower tractor, which wouldn't be able to use a snow blower. The vent track comes with, it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. You get snow blowers, blades. You can basically do all kind of maintenance with it. So it's basically a Swiss Army, piece of equipment we could use to replace mowers, replace snow blowers, leaf blowers, all kinds of stuff.
Oh, yeah, let's give Stan this one.
All right.
What year is ours?
The tractor, the thing
The
is,
vent track,
we don't have a vent track
Oh.
now.
but it says replace it. That's why.
Yeah, I'll give you the year on that because I have it here.
Oh, replace with.
Yeah, 67 is a 2011 John Deere, and it has 6,097 hours on it.
The value of that? Well, we don't know.
I don't know. So we might net some value if we sell a fixed asset. All right. Any other questions on capital side? Everybody good? All right. I appreciate the discussion on that. That's a big topic for us here. Jeff, are you good? You know where we're going? All right.
Yeah, we're gonna take out lights. Put in.
Correct. With nothing from the developer impact fee. All right, Vince, thanks for sticking with us here during this part.
Wake 'em up.
So what we're gonna talk about now is our last category. We talked about the general fund a while ago. This is one of the components of the general fund. Wanted to make sure Vince was here in case there was any questions. He couldn't be here last Thursday, so that's why we're skipping around a little bit. So Community and Economic Development Department, staff of 11, Director of Community and Economic Development, Planner, Code Specialist. We have 2 part-time code specialists as needed. The zoning officer we just brought on board, the sewage enforcement officer who's funded by the sewer fund budget, Our part-time fire inspector, we have, two full-time, admins. We had, one part-time admin that's vacant at this point. What we looked at for 24, continue to add, into our permitting software, computer management. So we added like tree permits, on-lot septics this year, all of those things that we were keeping paper. We've been working to get in the computer still. One of our larger projects, if you notice, we have a storage room behind here in our conference room. There's all of the, commercial building permits. We took the commercial building permits and we've been digitizing them over, last year. This year, in excess of about a $50,000 dollar project we've been working through. So we'll be complete by the end of the year. We're onboarding our new zoning officer after that search. We've continued to manage through staffing shortfalls. We're down the planner. We're hoping to onboard planner in 2025. We've increased staff certification and training. Credit to all the people in the department. Some of the things they've gotten this year, right? They have some alternate on-lot tech training. Include now we're looking at drip irrigation systems, which is 2 people have become certified to be able to do that. We've certified a residential plumbing certification for a gentleman. Another gentleman got residential mechanical, which allows them to now inspect those components. Vince completed his residential plan review. Fire investigator, part-time position. He finished his 2 of his 3 modules to become a certified CFM, certified fire marshal. One of them's legal and management was the other component. Also completed his fire inspector too. So we continue to develop talent in the department. And it's been an emphasis and also recertifying that talent for where we are. We did, as we notified the board a couple months ago, maybe last month, we successfully completed our 5-year accessibility audit from labor and industry, which is a huge component. Some things about permits and breakdowns and what the department's doing. We were down this year. We've seen 6 land development planning commission applications. I think we were down. We were at 11 last year. So we've seen a reduction as we've talked about the economy and where things going. 15 zoning hearing board applications, which is about in line with what we see. Working to close building permits still back from 2015. We've been taking those several at a time. Still working through that. From year to date, January to October, 54 new home permits, 456 residential alteration permits, 211 zoning, 17 business use, 3 home occupation, 12 street tree, 10 on-lot sewage systems, 141 commercial permits, so new construction and alteration, renovation. We passed the unexpected DEP MS4 random spot inspection this summer. Credit to the public works staff and our water resource officer for getting us through that without any violations. We submitted our annual MS4 project and our report to the state as required by the end of September. We also worked with the engineering group plus public works to identify those MS4 projects. Spring Creek, as we said, Hills of Lockridge Basin, and over here, Brookside Swell. 942 residential inspections passed through the hands of our inspectors for the year so far. About 4.5 per day. 119 fire inspections through our part-time fire inspector. These are all kind of components for fire and lake safety, as well as some public fire education outreach, going to update key holder information in secure lock boxes, and those initial ones. So our one part-time individual with 119 inspections has been exceptional on that part of this. 300 code complaints we processed and handled so far. That is our code specialist, one position, who's also certified to do various residential building side now. I would note to the board, which I think is very impressive, none of those 300, they were resolved without going through the court process.
They were not.
They were all resolved without having to go to the magistrate.
Wow.
So very impressive on where we are. 26 stormwater complaints were submitted, 31 on-lot septic inspections for those new constructions. We verified 170 septic pump outs. What are we looking for in 2025? Continue the zoning look back, and you'll see it's actually highlighted in one of our future slides here. We have funded approximately 100,000 in planning studies for either the zoning or the Saldo look back. They need to close out those long-term projects. As you see, we want to have a robust certified staff. So continue to push staff to get certified. Continue our search for the planner, manage that staff. We have had shortfalls without Vince and Renee, all of our heavy lifting between the two of them. I can't say enough about what they've done for the department as well as managing through that shortfall, and they should be recognized for all the work that they've done on that. I don't know what we would be doing without the two of them. So permitting software, we want to continue to look at the road opening, as we said, the tree replacement permits in there, but those types of updates. Legal and our fire inspector has been working through the fire and life safety code to get that update before the board. Would like to start to think about a rental registration for these rental properties. Just get them on the books so we know where they are, and get some contact information. Want to keep reviewing codes and standards for updating. We know the state is going to go to the 2021 International Building Code. So they're going to update the Uniform Construction Code. So we're going to have that on our plate, as well as updating the Property Maintenance Code, the ordinance for road openings and road opening permits. Try to get our attention on a sewer grease trap inspection program, both with the sewer department plus permits and our SEO. We need to adjust our sewer lateral ordinance to address common interest development. So there'll be ordinance update for the board. These highlights are concerns, and I don't want to keep reiterating them because we talked about it. You know, what is building going to do? We kept our permitting at its levels right now. Vince has been working through several projects where we think might be shovel ready for next year to grab those building permits. We are going to recommend a potential 5% increase in fees for permitting, as this covers our costs that we've seen both to handle in-house as well as our third party. Our third parties notified us that they're going to have that 5% increase in cost to cover their operation. So much like, as I mentioned, the sewer authority raising rates on people, it's necessary that we do that for our third party now to cover our costs. So.
Yeah, I just want to mention, thank you, that we have not increased our pricing. You know, last time we took a hard look at the fee schedules in 2019 and 2020. So we've been able to maintain our costs across the board since 2020. So, you know, in projecting what we're going to have coming maybe this year, you know, again, with that third party increase. And I will say about our third party increase, they've held their costs same amount a year. So, you know, we just anticipate the need for that this year.
Well, didn't Keyco's request an increase?
With their fee schedule,
Right.
they
Well, they are going.
they are right. So.
And then just a note, right, of these economic conditions.
There it
As
is, I see.
there it is, right in there.
I circled.
Yeah, super important. And I would say, you know, something to note about the biggest driver of expenditures in here, as well as revenue, are these building permits. And on the commercial side, just so the board's aware and the public how that happens, you know, you come in, you pick up your permit, you pay your fee. On the commercial side, our third party reviews that process as well as performs various inspections. So it's always makes me a little bit nervous when we have larger scale projects come in at the end of the year because we've received the money and we've booked it for the year we've taken it. But then we get charged by our third party as they complete inspections. So that year-long commercial building project that we get paid for right now in October, November, we receive the money, but that cost on the back end for them to inspect for the next 8 months is born in the 2025 budget. So we always want to make sure we have enough coming in that we know going out. So sometimes that's hard to predict. If we get a rush at the end of the year of all commercials coming to pick up their permits, now we can't spread that cost out. So the residential is a little bit different because we have the individuals in house that can handle that process. So that's a little more even of a revenue stream, if that makes sense.
To look at that contract. But when it
Well-
comes in, that's what they're locked in.
Well, they are, so they are, but the issue is they're locked in. We don't pay them in real time. We don't say, here's the total for the job. They take the total in quarters as they do progress. So,
They're not locked in, no charge at their increased rate.
well, we're going to account for that component, but it's not like they go then and raise rates each time of the project. It's more like, if we take $100,000 building permit in November, it's going to cost us, 70 or 80,000 in 2025. And we didn't take $100,000 building permit in 2025. We're behind. We have to hope we have enough commercial building permits to come in to cover that amount. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and we, they give us the rate, like Bruce said, say this, somebody came in November, well, they charge 100,000 just because they do the inspections in the next year and they had a rate increase. That rate's already set from the price that they gave us. So I did work with them a couple years ago Kiko's used to bill by inspection. But we worked with them on the commercial projects to bill in quarters, like Bruce had said, so 25%. So we try to alleviate that much going into the next year as we can. But it's tough because, a lot of businesses, a lot of commercial developers, they want to try to get things off their books at the end of the year and pay for the permits. And we're stuck with next year's budget to pay for those inspections. I mean, albeit they're at the cost that locked in, but we're still paying for them in the next fiscal.
So part of it's an issue of government accounting, not accrual accounting.
Well, you just budget according.
Right.
But it's unpredictable.
Sounds like pay me now or pay me later.
Right. It's just, it affects that overall thing where if we don't have any more warehouse construction, but if you would set 2 warehouses and bring in $500,000 in November, and now you don't have large scale projects in 2025, you're going to pay that several $100,000 in building. So we try to budget appropriately, but it's always an unknown. So
I think what we're talking about is big projects like top wall.
Right.
Right.
It's the big stuff.
Correct.
And if I can add anything, don't mind, Bruce, so these numbers here are pretty conservative because we don't know where the economy is. And we do have a lot of projects in the pipeline. We have, obviously Mertztown. But again, that's going to be driven by the economy and where the interest rates are, where everything goes. So again, these are pretty conservative. We could say, hey, we're going to have 100 homes next year, but I don't think that's fair to the taxpayers to do that. So we stayed pretty conservative.
And then just to show where we are in the picture chart, of course, in the pie chart, that commercial building permit 285 and the residential 175. Those are the drivers for the department. Some other miscellaneous permits. Our highlights, as we just talked about, we increased that alternate commercial inspector 413, 473. We adjusted a little bit full-time for the salary adjustments during staff transitions. 414, 112. That's the planning and zoning officer sides now on that side. And then, as I said, the planning studies, wanted to make sure we have enough to get that off the ground. So from 50,000 to 100 to try to get an RFP out and somebody engaged. There are those expenditures, of course, majority of salary. That's what we're doing here. And then the next biggest, that alternate third party inspections, that 289,500. So staffing and third party are our expenditures here. Just a summary like we talked about, our building permits, we're gonna keep those basically unchanged. We're mindful of less land development plans, which means less construction and building. And then we're trying to work on those economic conditions. So anything on planning, development, it's pretty standard budget from 2024. Good. All right. And then go ahead, Mark.
Just an overall comment that, looking at just the, Department of Community and Economic Development budget doesn't really tell us very much. It's really, when you get to the slides, that you can see things like the increase in, the expenditures associated with the look back ordinance and the saldo and so forth. And so for next year, would recommend that the slides that you've been using be an attachment in the budget book itself, so we would have an understanding of where it's actually going before coming in and listening to it.
Okay, we can do that. And I think that we try to highlight those categories that change and aren't standard. So. Anything else?
Just out of curiosity, I know I had mentioned to Bruce earlier today, Ron and I were speaking and we were curious about the pool. I know that a few years back, we were undecided as to whether or not it made sense to keep it operational. And according to what we're looking at now, if we're reading this correctly, the revenue was about 118 and the expenditures were about 260. So I guess the question is, what has the percentage of residents using it? Has it gone down? Is it like static? I think we just need to try to figure out, and I'm speaking for myself, but I'm curious to see what the rest of the board has to say about the pool.
Yeah, and I would just say I'm gonna have to reach out to recreation, get those numbers, but I can say membership continues to diminish. So I don't know. I can find out the resident and non-resident number, but I don't have those kind of offhand. I know that with, we were at a point of what 80 pools being built a year through building permits, that we were getting substantial construction for residents here for pools. So I don't know if that's part of the diminishing of that, but I'll get those numbers. For
Yeah,
you.
I've seen a number just in my neighborhood alone of pools going in. So, but yeah, that'll be helpful, just out of curiosity, because I certainly wouldn't think we would want to continue to throw money at something that's not going to be, kind of throwing money away, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is a difficult piece because I think in my time here, we we haven't been close to breaking even. I would say at least some people I talk to that either have pools or have managed pools at some point on the municipal side always say, they're great, but you're never gonna, you're either gonna break even or lose money in them. That's just the way it is. Even if you put a $5 million pool expansion in, you're gonna make money for a while, and then that's gonna disappear once the newness wears off. So, yeah, I think it's one of those quality of life things of what's the break even on return, and can we be a little more efficient in our pool management? Is it something where we have to take lifeguard or staffing back from EMAC, or are there a contractor? Not that we have a problem with their service, but is there a way that we manage that in house? Is there a way we look at those components to drive that down? But we have the pool where it's not included here. But I will say there's been a discussion from staff that slide has met its lifespan out there. So we had shopped various vendors between Stan, Kylene, and Denise. You're talking $150,000 now for a pool slide that was 40,000. Fortunately, between Stan and Jason, we actually have the railings and everything that were going bad out getting rebuilt and powder coated to make them back operational, or we would be asking you for a $150,000 pool slide this year. So, and same with the diving board, as those parts come out of service, we're gonna have to take the diving board out. You're losing amenities. So how does that drive your membership that wants to come here and everything else, you know? But it's a question of what is that level that the board wishes to have to serve the public? And if the public's not coming there anymore and we start to show those numbers, then
Well, I was glad to see that there weren't any capital projects for the pool this year.
yeah, and I would note on that, 260, we did complete that $50,000, project for around the top of that. So in the year before that, it was the tile. So we have been putting some dollars in the pool. I mean, I would think, I'm not going to speak for Stan, but I would think that basically the pool, even though it was built in like 1939, still seems to be somewhat operational. We're starting to see those things that we need to address, leveling the deck, do things like we did with the tile, where it's still here and functional. But at what point is it time to, go a different direction?
Okay, but from my perspective, I think that the pool is a nice benefit for the residents. And I would hate to give it up, but even for it might not make money, but it is a benefit for the people that even go there a few times. a
And that's,
year.
and that's the battle, right?
Yeah.
Trying to make sure we're,
Well, how many applications are,
I think he said he's got to get the.
Yeah, I'd
you
have to
don't,
look. I have to look.
approximately, it's under 200, wasn't it?
I think it's a little over that. I think it's like 250, 230,
So
somewhere in there. It used to be 450, close to 500. I would say we're just over 200 now.
We're just over 200 number of residents in our township.
Well,
Gotta
that-
be in the single digits that use it.
But that's not the people that show up and pay individual fees. That's just
But Bruce also said non-residents can buy membership.
So non-residents can buy membership. It's a little more expensive, but
My concern is our residents,
yeah.
and if that's, would make that number even lower.
no, but people do go and just pay for
Pay for the day.
Daily
one-
rate.
for the day.
Day rate.
And that's the way my grandkids work it is, they've got a Boy Scout swim test coming up, and so then they'll go down and swim laps for a few days, and then they're done with the pool program. But having it there to use is a big benefit.
Yeah, and I would say that's gonna be hard to get the day rate numbers, because I don't think we do a resident, non-resident day rate anymore. It's just the day rate. So I'd have to look, but I would say as part of that 200, a little over 200, I know that the swim club has to be members at the local pool where they swim. So I would say either some of those individual, under 18 memberships potentially are associated with the swim club. So they are a driver for that use. But what we're finding is we have between Emmaus, Albertus, and McCungy, we have to be very competitive on the side of the pool where they're running them. Well, at least McCungy is running it as a private business, and how they can control those expenses. I know Emmaus is a break even. They say they make some money, but where they're located, they have people in renting pavilions and everything else. So they're drawing crowds in addition to that. So yeah, we'll try to grab that data and see like
Yeah,
truly how we've come down.
It would be great if and again, I don't know what that is, and I know that staff is always looking for ways to encourage, usership. Be great if we could try to drive more. If, again, if the decision of the board to continue with the pool is to try to drive more interest to the.
Yeah. And I think, kind of on the neighbor part, right? It's hard for us to adjust our rates to a certain level.
right,
We
we
have to
can't-
be
yeah,
competitive with those.
Yeah, we're just.
Yeah.
I-
So
If you can check for me, just the percentage of residents that are, it's 1, 2, or 3%.
I'll check it.
that
And I
use
would,
it, And let,
I would tell you, it's probably not even that, right? On 33,000 residents, 10%'s 3,000, 1%'s what, 300. So you're probably with memberships, probably sub 1%, right? On a quick math.
That's my argument.
Yeah.
But I
taking a
thought I saw
loss.
someplace that it was 2,000 people attended or something like that.
Taking a loss for 1% of the population, the other 99% paying the freight. Uh, I don't know, maybe some organization would want to take it over. We have a pool blocks away, pool. But anyway, and the loss, what, you have that number, or do you have to look for?
I have to look for the number. I would tell you that I ran the losses for, I don't have it with me. I've ran the losses for the last couple of years on the finance side, but recreation has all the ones for the membership. So I have to have them pull that for me. I don't have that available.
Anything else?
I got one more item. I know it was, I believe it was corrected, or maybe not, the rents and royalties. We're renting out homes for,
That's on, yeah.
right, so we're even getting less.
No, you're getting what you're showing in there.
Well,
Is-
what would the rent be paid on say the Sean's house or the Camp Olympic or the bungalow or the Kratzer house?
I'll have them pull them all because, back in the day, we actually had all of that was after the rental management fee that we collected, plus the component of repairs. We've separated repairs now in a rental repair line item. But I'll give you an example. So we got our rate increase request for over here at Sean's house. I think they're 1725, 1750, and they're going to 18, a little over 18 a month. We could push that, of course, up a little bit, but we've had a long-term tenant in there that we really don't want to see, turnover in there. We can always push it for that side of it. But if you take that 1,800 a month, remember you're losing fees because we have a management company that does that. So you're not seeing on this part of the budget a true picture, but we'll get you the rents. We have them all set.
I did look it up, a comparable building to rent house, Lower McCungy, 2,800 a month. And then I'm assuming they pay their sewer and trash bills at the Kratzer home or the Sean's house or the Camp Olympic.
Yeah, Kratzer's on lot, I believe. Campo's on lot. This is on lot.
Do they pay their garbage?
It's part of it's our property, it's part of our payment.
Okay.
I know we put out a message to the renters in our township to inform their tenants that the garbage rates are going up.
Yeah.
So that just even makes it more of a realistic, right? I mean, I should sell my house and move, and I would have an extra big chunk of money.
We do work with
Florida instead of a month.
But
I'll
we
go
do
to
work with
Greenwood.
we do have a rental management company that does set our rates, that does, say this is what it's valued at.
Well,
So
we
we
should
do-
relook at that. Yeah. We definitely should relook at that. And just by the going rates today, and I was just going by the budget here. This property is about 1,200 per month.
Well,
Not even paying your.
well, remember that's net though, right? That's less of all of our fees for management.
Garbage. Sewer.
Right.
I think that should be looked at. I don't know what the rest is.
Worth looking into.
Okay, and
The norm is 28.
uh,
One more question, Mark. Sorry. Yeah, the Kratzer barn too is, I think that's empty.
We store equipment in there on occasion.
The
we still-
bottom's empty. See in the doors.
Yeah, the bottom's full of old junk in there.
There's a
There's,
lot of sewer manhole.
Yeah.
pieces.
Yeah, I seen it. It was, they were probably still working. They didn't let it open. They would go back and lock it up. But just, that's a giant building that could help us with our budget.
one of the grants that we dole out should probably be looked at. And that's the Senior Citizens Club that, they basically have money that they don't know what to do with, that they, cut their membership fees from $10 a year to $5 a year. And their lunches, I think they're cutting back from $2 to $1. I'm not sure about that part, but they have a separate fund that has $30,000 in it that was a travel fund. But they're cutting off the travel stuff, but how much that's in there is prepaid from trips that are in the future and so forth. The accounting on that's a little on the sketchy side. So I guess let it go for this year, but be aware that next year it probably ought to be scrutinized.
Yeah, and I think if the board's willing to reduce any grant amount to the senior citizens, I'm more than happy to implement any of those. I'm not sure I would want to recommend that side of it, but of course, the will of the board, we'll make the adjustment however necessary. And I would say the other component we should look at in the grant side, the Historical Society did ask for significant funding again for the year over what we normally do. That 30,000, instead of their normal, they were at 10 to 12. I would also note we, repair the log house for them. There's things that we also have done. And it's an area that the board may want to look at on that side of it. My recommendation on that is to continue to keep that at its normal amount. I know they had a movie project where they asked for those additional dollars. The township did fund that higher. And now there's movie distribution plus other things in there. So if you're looking at grants, I would consider that, normal $12,000 funding stream. So.
And then there's always my favorite, $26,000 to the school district for a traffic car, guards.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. But, we were gonna talk about that yearly. That was a yearly thing. So this year I am at the same position. People pay school tax, they pay yearly for it.
Yep.
And everybody's getting raises at the school district, and, perks, and I don't think we should subsidize the school district.
Agree.
I'm absolutely against it.
Agree.
A lot of restaurants, but whoever brought it up.
I'm okay with continuing.
I, I'm okay with ending it. We agreed on it because we were it was crunch time when it was brought to us. School was about to start and we were kind of in a pinch. We were supposed to talk about it yearly, correct?
We were, yes.
So
I would not, though, just not to interrupt the board's discussion, I would just remind the board that the school district's budget is usually from, July 1 to June 30. And they always request these dollars, in the beginning of January or February in the middle of their, ongoing budget. So they may have already accounted for these funds where, I would just want to make sure the board doesn't get something about how there's going to be a budget shortfall now on that $200 million spending plan
I'm
from
gonna say
the,
it's lost in the
from the
rounding.
that, correct.
Lost in the rounding.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Personally, I appreciate you letting us know that, but that's not our concern. We're in our budget talks now. So, when they do their stuff, it's not relevant.
Well, you know where I stand.
Yep. All right.
understood. We'll make the adjustment. anything else that we have floating out there?
Just in closing, that budget discussions, go to your department heads, if there's anything that this year needed. Because I'll go back to that statement. We don't know what economic conditions or what will be dealt to us in 2025, where we will need that emergency, that fund that you explained. So I just, we're all trying here, you can tell. Maybe they could see something that we're missing, that maybe in 2025 we don't need.
Yeah, and I appreciate that too.
They're usually here and they, or do you address it there? Which.
What's the, so first of all, thank you, Bruce and staff, for not only the budget, but everyday duties that you guys take care of on behalf of the township. Where do we stand now with the budget talks? Are we scheduled to have another one?
Yeah.
So we know scheduling, obviously.
Yeah, so I think it's up to the board. I mean, we're scheduled for Thursday and Monday again. So the 31st and the 4th, I feel like we're in a good spot for the 31st that we don't have to potentially meet. It's what the board thinks, or how you feel about us making these revisions, getting another draft component ready in that part. If you would like to meet Monday again and say we'll meet for an half hour, an hour, review where we are, make sure that we're delivering as a staff, what's the expectations of the board. And then we can go and we'll be ready to kind of go to print out of that component. So,
That work for everyone? Monday the 4th?
Or actually, okay, so we got consensus between the four of us, so it's really
Correct.
only Brian. And so I would think we could take a few minutes after the meeting on the 7th to
Does that work?
go through it again, and that wouldn't slow you down any, would it?
that, no, I think we'd be in a good spot unless there's changes, so that we're ready to go for that second meeting in November. That's a drop dead date though, that we have to go out. So you have to consider the reading of the ordinance so that we can get out to advertise. So
But-
it's not a problem to do the 7th. I would say I need an executive with the board to talk personnel at that meeting as well. But it may also benefit us to have an executive if we have the opportunity to talk personnel or things that may affect the budget, as well as various other items regarding staffing. So I would say that we should probably have that the 7th as well. Unless you'd like to look at that on the 4th with those changes, but I think we'll be all right. I would recommend that to happen Thursday.
So the 7th after the board meeting.
Correct. Or at the end of the meeting, right? We're still in a public meeting, and then we can have a further discussion on budget.
Julie, did you have something? Oh, okay.
Sorry, I think,
Correct, yeah, regular BOC.
I'll confirm, so there's no confusion. Instead of meeting the 31st and the 4th, we are going to perform the general business of the township at the meeting on the 7th. At the end of in an old business component, we'll talk about the updates for the budget, and then I'll need the board for an executive to have a discussion about personnel. So I think that's the game plan, and everybody feels comfortable with where we are.
I did a quick draft of the agenda, and so far we only have the 2 projects to approve that were out to bid. So it's a fairly light
quick
agenda.
meeting.
I think that's a good idea to do it on the 7th.
So everybody available.
Yep.
You have to check with Brian Higgins.
Okay,
Yeah, I think he'll be back though.
sounds good. I appreciate the board's feedback as always. and the public, just for the process. We'll finish up this discussion on the 7th. That budget we will read, on the 14th of November. It will be, in view, here at the Township Building and on our website for, the general public to, as per the state law, look at, and, before adoption on the second meeting in December. So, that plan would, address the extra strength, rate, setting for that second meeting, the adoption of the budget in the second meeting of December, and any other, housekeeping associated with that. So, I know that the budget is currently posted online for those residents that have any feedback, both for the board or for staff. But we will look for your comments, after that as well on the 14th and onward. So, that's the schedule for, review by the public and adoption by the board.
And enjoy Halloween at home rather than here.
Yeah,
You can go trick or treating.
yeah, it is 7:55. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.